You're going to miss your own daughter's graduation for a hair appointment? My mother didn't even look up from her phone. She said, Mia needs to look perfect for her college interviews next week. This was the only slot available. If you've ever been the invisible child in your family, hit subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. This is about the moment I stopped waiting for them to see me. My name is Rachel. I'm 32 years old now, and I work as a software engineer in Seattle. But 5 years ago, I was 27, standing in a university auditorium wearing my master's degree robes, watching my parents gather their coats 40 minutes before the ceremony even started. That was the day that changed everything. The thing is, this wasn't new. When I was 16, I made it to the state finals for the Science Olympiad. I'd spent 8 months building a water filtration prototype in our garage. My parents drove Mia 3 hours to tour a private high school that same weekend. They said they'd make my competition, but they never showed. I stood on that stage holding my second-place trophy, scanning the audience for faces that weren't there. When I got home, my dad asked if I'd won. I said second place. He nodded and said, "Well, Mia got accepted to the academy, so we're celebrating tonight." 2 years later, I got a full scholarship to college for engineering. My mother's response was to remind me that Mia would need help with tuition since she didn't qualify for as much aid. She said, "You understand, don't you? You've always been so independent." What she meant was, "You've always required less attention, so we gave you less." For years, I told myself it was fine. I told myself I was strong, self-sufficient, that I didn't need validation. But there's a difference between independence and invisibility. My master's graduation was on a Saturday in May. I'd finished my thesis on machine learning applications in renewable energy. I'd worked full-time while completing the program. It took me 3 years of night classes and weekend research sessions. I'd invited my parents 8 weeks in advance. They'd confirmed twice. My father even said he was proud of me, which was rare enough that I'd saved the text message. The ceremony started at 2 p.m. My parents arrived at 1:50 p.m. with Mia. She was 22 then, finishing her undergraduate degree in communications. She spent the first 10 minutes complaining about the uncomfortable chairs. My mother kept checking her phone. I asked if everything was okay. She said, "Just confirming Mia's appointment." I said, "What appointment?" That's when Mia said, "I have a hair appointment at 3:30 p.m. Mom found this amazing stylist who's booked out for months, and someone just canceled." I stared at her. I said, "My ceremony is 3 hours long?" My mother waved her hand. She said, "We'll stay for your part, obviously. But once you walk, we need to leave. Mia has those interviews coming up." The interviews were 9 days away. 9 days, and they couldn't reschedule a hair appointment. I felt something crack open inside my chest. Something I'd been holding closed for years. I said, "You're going to miss the keynote speech, the reception, all of it for a haircut?" My father sighed. He said, "Rachel, don't be dramatic. We're here, aren't we?" They stayed for 53 minutes. I know because I checked my phone when they stood up. I was sitting with my cohort, waiting for our names to be called. I watched my mother tap Mia's shoulder. I watched all 3 of them gather their coats and bags. My mother gave me a little wave. Then they walked out. My name was called 11 minutes later. I walked across that stage to applause from strangers and classmates. I shook the dean's hand. I smiled for the photographer. And I felt absolutely nothing. Afterward, there was a reception in the engineering building. My advisor, Dr. Patricia Lim, found me standing alone near the coffee table. She said, "Where's your family?" I said, "They had somewhere to be." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she said, "Rachel, I've known you for 3 years. You're one of the most brilliant students I've worked with. But you have a pattern of minimizing yourself. You say things like it's fine when it's clearly not fine. This is your day, and if your family couldn't stay, that's their loss. But you need to stop pretending it doesn't hurt." I felt my eyes sting. I said, "I don't know how to stop." She said, "You start by saying it out loud. Say, 'This hurt me.'" I couldn't do it then, but I thought about her words for days, weeks, months. I started therapy that summer. My therapist asked me to list moments when I'd felt unseen. I filled 4 pages in the first session. For 2 years, I kept showing up to family events. Holidays, birthdays, Mia's graduation from undergrad. I smiled. I brought gifts. I listened to my mother talk about Mia's job prospects and new apartment and boyfriend. I waited for someone to ask about my life, my work, the promotion I'd earned, the research paper I'd published. No one did. Then, 3 years after my graduation, something shifted. Mia got engaged. The wedding planning consumed every family conversation. My mother called me on a Tuesday in October. She said, "We need to talk about the wedding budget." I said, "Okay." She said, "Your father and I have been thinking. We can contribute $25,000, but Mia really wants the venue in Napa, and that's $40,000 just for the space. We were hoping you could help." The air left my lungs. I said, "You want me to help pay for Mia's wedding?" She said, "Well, you make good money now, and we've always helped you when you needed it." That was a lie. I'd paid for my own undergraduate housing after freshman year. I'd worked 2 jobs during college. I'd taken out loans for my master's program because they said their money was tied up in Mia's expenses. I said, "When did you help me?" My mother's voice went cold. She said, "We raised you, didn't we? We gave you a home, food, everything you needed. And now you're being selfish about your sister's wedding?" I hung up. My hands were shaking. I called my therapist and asked for an emergency session. She said, "What do you need right now?" I said, "I need to stop being their backup plan." That's when I started what I called Operation Receipts. I wasn't trying to be vindictive. I was trying to see clearly. I went through old emails, texts, photos. I made a timeline. Every missed event, every last-minute cancellation, every time I'd been asked to step aside so Mia could have something. My 16th birthday dinner cut short because Mia had a date. My college graduation, where they'd left the reception early for Mia's sorority event. The time I'd been in a car accident and called my parents from the hospital, and my mother said she'd come after she finished helping Mia move into her apartment. I'd waited 4 hours. A nurse had driven me home. I didn't want money. I didn't want an apology I'd never get. I wanted boundaries. My best friend from grad school, Yosef, came over the night I finished the timeline. He read through it. He said, "Rachel, this is abuse. Maybe not the obvious kind, but it's systematic neglect." I said, "That feels extreme." He said, "Does it? Because from where I'm sitting, your family has spent 30 years telling you that your needs don't matter. And you've spent 30 years believing them." 2 weeks later, my parents called again about the wedding money. This time, my father was on the line too. He said, "We really need an answer, Rachel. Mia's counting on you." I took a breath. I said, "I'm not contributing to the wedding. And I need to tell you both something. I'm taking a step back from this family for a while." My mother said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "I've spent my whole life trying to earn your attention. I made myself smaller so Mia could have more. I convinced myself it was fine. But it's not fine, and I'm done pretending." My father said, "This is ridiculous. You're being oversensitive." I said, "You left my master's graduation for a hair appointment. Do you even remember that?" There was silence. Then my mother said, "That was years ago. Why are you bringing up old things?" I said, "Because it wasn't just that day. It's been every day. And I can't keep waiting for you to see me." My father said, "If you don't want to be part of this family, that's your choice." I said, "It is. I'll send you an email outlining my boundaries. I hope someday we can have a different relationship. But right now I need space." I hung up before they could respond. The email I sent was 3 paragraphs. I said I loved them, but I wouldn't be attending family events for the foreseeable future. I said I needed them to respect my decision and not pressure me to change my mind. I said if they wanted to rebuild our relationship, it would require acknowledging the harm and consistent effort over time, not just words. My mother's response came 6 hours later. It was 1 line. She said, "You're breaking your father's heart." Mia texted me at 11:47 p.m. She said, "I can't believe you're doing this to me right before my wedding." You're so selfish. I didn't reply to either of them. The next 6 months were the hardest of my life. I blocked my parents' number after the 15th voicemail. Most of them were my mother crying, saying I was tearing the family apart. 3 were from my father, saying I owed them respect. 1 was from Mia, saying I'd ruined her engagement celebration because Mom was too upset to enjoy it. My therapist reminded me that I wasn't responsible for their emotions. She said, "You set a boundary. They're trying to tear it down because it's inconvenient for them. That tells you everything." Yosef checked on me almost daily. He brought groceries when I couldn't get out of bed. He reminded me that choosing myself wasn't selfish. He said, "You're not the villain in this story, Rach. You never were." 8 months after I'd sent that email, I got a letter in the mail. It was from my father, handwritten on legal pad paper. He said he'd been thinking about what I'd said. He said he didn't understand why I was so hurt, but he could see that I was. He asked if I'd be willing to meet for coffee. I sat with that letter for 3 days. I called my therapist. She said, "What do you want?" I said, "I want a father who sees me." She said, "Do you think he can be that person?" I said, "I don't know, but I think I need to find out." We met on a Saturday morning at a cafe near my apartment. My father looked older than I remembered. He ordered black coffee and didn't touch it. He said, "I don't know how to fix this." I said, "I don't need you to fix it. I need you to hear me." He nodded. I told him about the science Olympiad, about the hospital, about my graduation. I told him what it felt like to watch my parents walk out of the auditorium. I said, I needed you to stay. Not for the whole thing, not for some grand gesture, just to stay. His eyes were wet. He said, "I didn't think it mattered that much. You always seemed so okay." I said, "I wasn't okay. I was just quiet." He said, "Your mother and we thought Mia needed more because she asked for more. You never asked." I said, "I shouldn't have had to." He sat with that. Then he said, "You're right." It wasn't a full apology. It wasn't a promise to change. But it was the first time my father had ever admitted he was wrong. We met 4 more times over the next 3 months. Conversations were slow, careful. My mother didn't come. She sent a card on my birthday that said she missed me, but she didn't apologize. Mia got married in June. I wasn't invited and I didn't expect to be. A year after that first coffee, my father called me. He said, "I want you to come to dinner. Just you and me and your mother. No Mia, no distractions. We need to talk." I almost said no, but something in his voice made me say yes. They came to my apartment instead. I didn't want to go back to their house, back to the place where I'd spent so many years invisible. My mother looked uncomfortable the whole time. She sat on my couch and said, "I don't understand why you're still upset." I said, "I know you don't, and I don't know if you ever will." My father said, "We're here because we want to try." My mother said, "I did my best." I said, "Your best wasn't good enough, and I need you to stop defending yourself and just listen." She started crying. She said, "I'm your mother. I gave you everything." I said, "You gave me a roof and food. You didn't give me your time or your attention or your pride, and I can't make you understand that. But I need you to know that's why I left." My father reached for my mother's hand. He said, "We can't change the past, but maybe we can do better now." I said, "Maybe, but it's going to take time. And I need you to stop expecting me to just get over it." They stayed for 2 hours. We didn't solve anything, but it was the first real conversation we'd ever had. 2 years after I'd sent that boundary email, I'm still rebuilding. My relationship with my father is careful but growing. We meet for coffee once a month. He asks about my work now. He remembers details. It's not perfect, but it's real. My mother and I are cordial. She doesn't apologize, but she stopped pressuring me to come to family events. I see her twice a year, and that feels like enough. Mia and I don't speak. She sent me a message last Christmas saying she didn't understand why I was punishing the family. I didn't reply. Maybe someday we'll find our way back to each other. Maybe we won't. I've made peace with both possibilities. I kept my master's degree diploma. It's framed in my office now, next to the photo Dr. Lim took of me at the reception, holding my degree and smiling despite everything. I look at it sometimes and remember what she said. This is your day. Their loss. She was right. It was their loss. And it took me 5 years to believe that. If your family has ever made you feel like you don't matter, I want you to know something. Your needs are not optional. Your feelings are not inconvenient. And choosing yourself is not selfish. It's survival. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. And if this story resonated with you, and if you need to hear it today, let me say it clearly. You are worth showing up for. Even if they didn't, you are.